Okay, ladies and gentlemen, take your seats. Once again, the president of the TV Academy, Steve Novak.
Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the dinner. Please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Now to our host for the evening. Terry Savage, Chicago's own money lady, started her career on Chicago's trading floors and her media career at Channel 26 in the 1970s. From there, she moved to Channel 5, then Channel 2, where she talked about the markets and explained personal finances. Her newspaper column started at the Sun-Times 30 years ago and has been syndicated by the Chicago Tribune for the last 5 years. These days, you see her on WGN Morning News on Wednesdays and hear her regularly on WGN Radio's Business Lunch program. And if you were watching TV earlier today, you saw Terry on CNN explaining the jobs report. She's hard at work on a new edition of her best-selling personal finance book, The Savage Truth on Money, out this fall. And last year, she herself was inducted into the Silver Circle. Please give a warm welcome to tonight's host, Terry Savage.
Well, hello everyone. This is really very exciting. Welcome to the official opening of the 2019 Silver Circle celebration. What a great honor to be asked to host an event that really does celebrate the best in our business, both in front of and behind the cameras. I see so many longtime friends here. I'm very careful not to call us old friends. And we're here to honor so many others. And all of you who came to be here in support of people that are receiving awards, thank you very much for coming and being part of our celebration. As we begin our Silver Circle introductions, can we do this one thing? Were you not impressed by these wonderful young people who have worked so hard and are so launched in their careers? Let's have another round of applause. All right, there are television stars of the future behind and in front of the camera, but now we honor our peers who have been involved in 25 years or more in the field of our television and our industry. They've made significant contributions to Chicago television, and in fact, they've set a remarkable standard of excellence for those who follow them. Now, last year I was honored to join this group, as Steve mentioned. Tonight, 11 more deserving honorees will become members of the Silver Circle. They include legendary stagehands, a beloved executive in station relations, a station manager and executive producer, a musician and composer, an innovative and visionary program director, a pioneering television news couple, and television journalists who demonstrate excellence in level-headed anchoring, hard-hitted reporting, and storytelling that uncovers the humanity in everyday people. So let's get our program started. Our first Silver Circle honorees this evening are Ed Collins and the late Jim Kehoe. Here to present Ed and Jim is the former Vice President of Broadcast Operations and Engineering. We used to call it ENG back in the day, do they still? At NBC5, Emmy Award winner Jan Golden.
Thank you. It is such a pleasure for me to present Eddie Collins and Jimmy Kehoe for induction to the Silver Circle Awards, though Jimmy is not here to enjoy it, but his son Jim will be here to accept in his honor. Though I have to tell you, Eddie and Jimmy would have had a box for me to stand on. They are the first stagehands ever to be inducted and are truly the unsung heroes of Chicago TV production. Their combined almost 100 years of extraordinary work for NBC Chicago. I met Eddie and Jimmy when I started at NBC. They taught me the ropes of TV production, as Eddie quickly became a mentor and a second father, and Jimmy's quick, dry humor always got us through those very long production hours. They were the heart of our production team. They were often the main conduits between talent, guests, audience, and the on-camera elements. They were our leads for lighting, carpentry, set creation. You'll see through this video that's about to happen over their amazing career, their dedication to excellence, whether they worked day-to-day local news, network news, elections, debates, conventions, meet the press, sporting events, marathons, auto shows, Jay Leno and David Letterman in Chicago, playwrights festivals, Kukla, Fran and Ollie, nationally syndicated shows, Jenny Jones and Jerry Springer. The NBC TV Stations Division labeled NBC Chicago the best production facility in the nation, not just because of our facility, but because of the experience, the excellence, and the professionalism of these guys, these stagehands and our tech crew. Eddie and Jimmy's leadership among stagehands and studio personnel resulted in their partnering with management no matter what the circumstances, so that we had the best for the company, for the employees, and for the product. So join me, please, in watching this and their amazing careers.
Stagehands Jimmy Kehoe and Eddie Collins each spent decades at Channel 5, building and lighting sets and crewing for some of Chicago's most iconic programs. They were there in the very beginning of television, vital contributors to what became known as the Chicago School. From the black and white era into the digital age, these production professionals helped create television magic as both creators of and witnesses to Chicago broadcast history for nearly half a century. Ed and Jim were members of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, IATSE, known as IA, Local 2. With their Local 2 brethren, they are the unsung heroes of Chicago television. Stagehands take the set designer's drawings and bring the sets to life, building them, assembling them, working with scenic artists to get them painted. And from the beginning of the medium, climbing countless ladders to hang the heavy studio Klieg lights and necessary key lights and spotlights. Stagehands also handle all the props and run the lighting boards for newscasts and productions. In TV's early years, when all the commercials were live, Jim and Ed raced between studios from the live programs to setting up the next commercial break, while handling all the lighting and coordinating cue cards. Ed and Jim and their fellow stagehands assembled and struck multiple production sets for regularly scheduled TV series like 40 Years of City Desk, the longest-running public affairs program in Chicago history. They witnessed heated exchanges between newsmaker guests from Malcolm X to an endless stream of mayors, senators, and beyond.
What is your real name?
Malcolm X.
Is that your legal name?
As far as I'm concerned, it's my legal name.
They also worked all the candidate debates and town hall forum specials. Ed and Jim worked on the staging crews for every genre, from talk shows to entertainment programs to public affairs panels. Channel 5 was also known for its award-winning children's shows, like Mr. Wizard and Ding Dong School, and later, shows like Bubblegum Digest and Kidding Around. The station created team programs, It's Academic, and a Piven Workshop series with high schoolers John Cusack and Jeremy Piven, and the occasional after-school special. In some shows, stagehands even became part of the on-camera action as Elmer the Elephant, or lending a hand to puppeteers Bert Tillstrom for Kukla, Fran, and Ollie holiday specials, and with Lamb Chop's best friend, Sherry Lewis.
Mister, what you call it? What you doing tonight?
Special projects like the Playwrights Festival really allowed Eddie and Jim's talents to shine. In the Merchandise Mart studio, they created a Southern country store for the dramatized retelling of the Emmett Till story, and an Erie mansion to showcase the talents of Joan Cusack. And they crewed the live broadcast of Morning Call with Steppenwolf's Laurie Metcalf, and on other On Stage on 5 productions. Along the way, they worked with national stars, including Bob Hope and Betty White and countless local greats. Ed and Jim always put long hours and extra effort into the big TV extravaganzas, the Chicago Emmy telecasts of the 1960s with weatherman tenor Harry Volkman.
A world you've never heard before.
And again in the 1970s at the Ballroom at Navy Pier with a rotating stage. It was an all-out station effort to move the sets and the prop warehouse from the Merchandise Mart to the new building. Ed and Jim played vital roles in staging the gala opening of NBC Tower with Doc Severinsen and the Tonight Show Band and a studio full of network stars. That same month, the staging crew, implementing Phase 2 of art director Jack Hackman's brilliant design, adapted the Tower gala set to host the Chicago Emmys. These yeoman production efforts were all the more challenging because at that point, there was no power or lighting grid yet installed in brand new Studio A. Keeping with that great showbiz tradition of the show must go on, the stagehands and tech crews made it happen. Jim and Eddie worked every shift and every local newscast, building countless NBC5 news sets from the simple draftsman's table of the 1950s and 60s to the complex and elaborate sets in succeeding decades, working daily with iconic Chicago news anchors and reporters. In this most collaborative of mediums, stagehands are the ultimate collaborators. Tonight, we celebrate and salute the half-century contributions of Jim Kehoe and Ed Collins and all the unsung hero stagehands who day in and day out create Chicago television.
I'll go first and be short. For those of you who may have known my dad, you would know that when he had been told about this, he would have gone, well, okay, but he would have been smiling ear to ear, knowing that he's been recognized for this. And the other part, he wouldn't have wanted to come up here. He shied away from the spotlight. And you notice in the montage, in the pictures, you didn't see my dad a lot. He was in there in some of those pictures, but he was just the little top of his head in the back. He'd always be hiding in the background. He didn't like to be front and center. He always used to tell us that show business was his life, and really it kind of was. He grew up, a lot of people don't know, his family had a traveling tent show, so a vaudeville show. So his mother, all his aunts and uncles, his grandfather, and he traveled with that show. So he would set up the tents, he would sell the popcorn, and sometimes he would be the actor, but he didn't like to do any of the acting, so he quickly got out of that. The other thing that you may not know is we grew up across the street from the Collinses. So our families were always together. And growing up as a kid, some of the best stories, I can always remember that Dad and Ed would be in the kitchen, and the kids would have to be somewhere else playing, but I'd always want to be in the kitchen because listening to their stories about what went on. So you think about all the years that they were in show business and all of the talent that they came across or worked with through that. And there would always be a story. So it's funny now, even in the later years, in the last few weeks with my dad, Ed would come over every day, and they would sit there on the couch, and it would go, Jimmy, do you remember the guy? And what guy? Well, remember the guy in the show that did this thing? And they'd go back and forth, and they would come back, and whoever that person might be, it might be they remember their name immediately, or a little while later they'd get their name, and then it'd be some sort of an anecdote about that particular person. And I remember a few of those, like my dad and I, we might be watching HBO, and we'd see a George Carlin special. And, you know, George Carlin would be doing his humor, and my dad would say, you know what, I worked with him when he first started. He was an announcer. He was very clean cut, came with a suit every day, super nice guy. But every time we'd be watching a TV show or a movie, the person up there, my dad would have something about that person, say, I worked with them. And, you know, it's just a lot of fun to be able to listen to them and the history. The other thing that my dad always used to talk about was he started out when television was live, and some of that came across in the video. And he really hated when it went to tape, because then everybody could do it over until they got it right. But when things were live, that was the excitement for him. And he'd talk a lot of times the shows that they were working on, like Walt's Workshop. He used to tell a story. Walt was building a boat. So he's going through, and it's like these handyman shows that you see today. So he's going through the steps, cutting the wood, putting the boat all together, and then they cut the commercial. So remember, this is live, the commercials are live, so they only have a few minutes. He comes over to Dad and he says, I think I put it together wrong. We need to take it apart and start again. So during the commercial, that's what they did. They hurried up, took it apart, put it back, made it right, so when he came back from commercial, he was ready to go to the next step. And there's lots of little stories like that about when it was live. He'd also talk about, since the commercials were live, they would have to, do some of the things during the commercial, and it was, it would be very interesting when he'd talk about they would, get things wrong sometimes, and they just have to, they'd have to make it right or do whatever they could to get through it. But I'd like to, since my dad is not here, I'd just like to thank everybody who may have worked with him or made this possible. He really would have been very excited to be here if he could. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I personally like to thank Silver Circle for having me tonight. Jim and I have a lot of people to thank, past and present, local to IATSE, my local, members and business agent Greg Carlson, Naboth, who we had a good relationship throughout my career. I had a lot of meetings with these folks, and it was great. Thanks to station managers for bringing us many projects. The managers were Jules Herberville, Bob Lemon, Bob Walsh, Larry Wirt. Also, our staging department were Dick Steele, Raleigh Reichard, Pat Sanzone, Tommy Schnecke, and the person that presented me this evening is Jan Golden, which she was great. The first show that I worked at NBC with Jimmy Keough was in 1952. It was a show called Coffee Ann. The Art Van Dam Quintet was the music. Marilyn Lovell was the singer. Hugh Downs was the host. And what a funny show that was. He did more darn dumb things than you could shake a stick at. He put handcuffs on one day and thought we had the key. We didn't have the key. So he had to wind up going to 11th and State and having the handcuffs taken off. But I did like working kid shows like Cup Show, Elmer the Elephant, KFO, Kukla Franali, Animal Playtime, and then soaps. I had more fun on soaps because I always wanted to find out what the final answer to the show was. Like Hawkins Falls, The Bennett Story, with a Chicago actress by the name of Eloise Kummer. I don't know if you remember her. She was terrific. Time to Live, Curtain Time, which was we did that at the Studebaker Theater. Queen for a Day, we did that at a house too. And Welcome Travelers, we did that at the Studebaker. I want to give a special shout out and a thanks to Jack Hatman, the art director. He taught me so many things, how to make a set look nice, and he always had a little slogan. Eddie, take that plant and nestle it in the corner, please. Okay, now turn it a little bit. All right, that's good. I use that at home now. Somebody said, what do I do with this? I said, nestle it in the corner. Jim Jr. was saying, we lived right across the street from one another. Our kids went to the same school. They grew up together. To this day, they're still good friends. We took vacations together. We went to Vegas, camping, parties. And you know the other thing that NBC did first? They had these outings every year, golf outings. They were terrific. And also they had Christmas parties for the kids. The kids got such a bang out of that. They couldn't wait to get there and then go in the studios and look around and see what's going on. So finally, my wife and children, I want to thank them for all the years they put up with me, and thanks to Silver Circle for this great honor. Thank you kindly very much.
Well, you know, part of the thing about getting an award for being around 25 years is you generate a lot of memories in 25 years or longer, as these gentlemen have, and so will the rest of our awardees. Well, now we're going to have two legends up here. Our next honoree, next honoree is Dolores. I'm cool with it. I've known Dolores for how long? Our next honoree is Dolores Mebane, and here to induct Dolores is the reigning king of Chicago broadcast executives. You'll all agree, Mr. Larry Wirt.
Thank you, Terry. Now I think I will officially pay the invoice that I haven't paid at all the stations you've worked at and delivered on. And, well, you're right now working for me now. You work on WGN? I'm just not paying you. Right. I'm trying to make a deal over here. Anyway, good evening. You said two legends. Dennis Swanson must be coming. Congratulations, former colleagues at NBC, Eddie and Jim. Great guys, class acts, and it's really neat to be in the room with you guys. And Jan Golden, who introduced them. One of the most proud days of my career was when I was able to promote her to run our entire operations and IT department. And she did nothing but outperform in that job. And she was so thoughtful the whole time. Whenever they had, and she had a box brought for her to stand on, she had one brought for me too. So it wasn't embarrassing for me. But I'm so proud of you, and you're just a rock star. So what an honor to be able to come back and see everybody, but to introduce somebody that was so special to me in my career, but so many other people too. I called her my consigliere of community engagement and advice. But I ended up in January of 1998 going to Channel 5 under a little bit of controversy. It was a little noisy over there. His name's already been said once, the poor guy. Jerry Springer was put on to do some commentaries, and it got a little crazy there. And so I came in during a bit of the chaos, right, Carol? And meeting people my first day, finally it settled a little bit, and Dolores Mebane looked over in the corner, and I saw her, and she gave me one of these. She said, "Come over here." She said, "Hey, boss man." She said, "I've got a lot of people for you to meet. It's going to take a while. None of them are happy. But we'll get through it one at a time." And Dolores went on in those first months, and she used her equity and her relationships to introduce me to people, not just in the African American community, but all of them. And she helped me establish some relationship that I still have today, some credibility that I think helped us through a very tough time. What a key important role. Had some great people watching our backs, two of them here tonight, my partner and colleagues, Sandy and Vera are here. Dolores' posse is here celebrating her. But after 30 years at NBC, the tail end of it was getting me and us through this chaotic time in 1998. It was so taxing on her that she went and opened up her own business, her own consulting company. I think we were one of her first clients that didn't pay her enough. But look, there are some unsung heroes in television stations. There just are. We all know it. And it's a 24/7 game. And Dolores, so special and so thoughtful that she just was there to give that unflappable advice all the time. And I usually listened. I did hire Don Lemon against, Dolores thought that could be challenging, and she was right. But look at him now. She was always consistently, a person, not just for me and not just for the community people out there, but inside as well. She just gave us good sound judgment. You saw her resume. It was pretty impressive. After going to Wendell Phillips High School, in the Hall of Fame there with the likes of Nat King Cole and Herbie Hancock. I had one musical moment with her that I recall. As she was taking me around, one time she was taking me to the HIV hospital, the Core Center, and I'd never been there. And a lot of young kids that were infected, we were going to go see and look around. And as we were driving, getting off at Ashland, I remember playing with my radio, and she said, "Stop, pull over. Did you just almost hit a Luther Vandross song with your cassette?" And I stopped and I looked at her and I said, "Always and forever, each moment with you." And that was it. That was it. We've been together, unconditional friends ever since. She's celebrating almost her 50th year, having the backs of people at Channel 5, but everywhere else in the community as well. On her time, she checks in, but she asks for things only for the Pioneer Home, the places that she represents, and she's always working and thinking of others. So, Dolores, I'm so proud to be able to not only be here, but I just say congratulations, and let's kick off the tape.
Dolores Mebane grew up in the Ida B. Wells homes on Chicago's South Side, and after stints in the sales and editorial departments at NBC5, she finished the last half of her 30-year career as the station's community affairs director. Along the way, she garnered hundreds of awards for Channel 5 and spearheaded Emmy Award-winning station projects about vital community issues, including health, education, and race relations. Dolores coordinated editorial, program, and public service efforts to tackle issues from literacy to winter coat drives to the homework hotline. Her community outreach even led her to host a meeting for voter registration with a young South Side community activist named Barack Obama, long before his stints in the state legislature, the U.S. Senate, and the White House. The new Chicagoan station project that Dolores led was launched at Jane Addams Hull House and showcased the city's immigrant roots and celebrated the culture, diversity, and contributions of immigrants to Chicago. Whether Dolores was speaking at a community event or making things happen behind the scenes, she gave it her all, and no matter what, she had fun doing it.
Buenas tardes. Soy Dolores Mebane, directora de Relación con la Comunidad.
You having fun? Yeah! You really having fun? Do you like the Millie? Yeah! That's Dolores Mebane over there. You're doing pretty well, Dolores. Thank you.
Dolores recruited volunteers for Junior Achievement at Sojourner Truth School and countless other causes. No one could resist her gifts of persuasion. Even news anchors and TV station general managers were convinced to roll up their sleeves to paint and redecorate the children's clinic at Cook County Hospital.
We scraped, we painted, we primed, we washed, and we actually enjoyed it. Didn't we all enjoy it? Most of us enjoyed this.
To Dolores Mebane, she wanted her to have roses in appreciation for her leadership in this project.
Her editorial speakouts throughout the city gave everyday Chicagoans the opportunity to voice their heartfelt opinions about issues facing the community. Dolores is also known for her sense of fashion and style. It was Dolores who took a bad hair day and turned it into a fashion statement.
You can't leave your hat on. Can't leave your hat on.
Above all, Dolores is known for her commitment to the community.
It does not matter where you come from. It doesn't matter. What matters is where you want to go.
For decades, Dolores Mebane successfully championed causes, great and small, and she did it heroically and with great style.
to show off that footwear.
Oh, yeah,
Come on.
I came here especially for you to know I really needed these boots.
Dolly Parton just called and she said, enjoy them. Look better on you.
Oh, God. I want to thank my Channel 5 boss, Larry Wirt, for introducing me tonight. Larry is the best. He and I go way back. And even though we are both still so young, it's also like to thank I'd also like to thank the TV Academy for this Silver Service honor. Being the Community Affairs Manager at NBC5 was the job of a lifetime for me, and I loved almost every minute of it. As we all know so well, broadcasters have an obligation to serve their community, and it was a commitment our station took very seriously. The public service announcements, the station projects, and the community outreach were labors of love for me, and I was lucky enough to have great co-workers and friends who also stepped up and helped the cause. Have you heard the cause yet? Raise your hand if you know much about cause. Cause, raise your hand. Cause. Some of them are here tonight, and I want to thank them once more for riding those peacock floats and endless parades, for answering those tricky math questions for the Chicago Public Schools homework hotline, and the sharing a winter coat or school supplies with those in need. We couldn't have done it without you. And I'd like to say to you, Larry Wirt, thank you very much, without question. Thank you.
Congratulations, Dolores. Okay, our next honoree is Fred Weintraub. And Fred, I'll make you a deal. You don't tell anybody how long we know each other, and I won't tell you some of the things I know about you. Here to present Fred is longtime Weigel broadcast executive and 2008 Silver Circle honoree, Neil Sabin. Neil?
Thank you, Fred, for letting me introduce you, and to the TV Academy for the honor of introducing Fred Weintraub. Fred Weintraub. Well, 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 they finally got to the W's. You're supposed to laugh at that joke longer because I don't have too much else to say. And you'll hear it again in the tape we're about to show. But there are a lot of other W's in Fred's life besides Weintraub. Among them are the following. Winner. He's a real winner. Fred fights the good fights to make things happen. Fred loves to make you look like the winner. He's really very generous that way. How can I help you? Is how Fred approaches so many situations. Wanderer. Fred is a wanderer around the city and suburbs, scouting for the best high school games to present on Weigel, another W, Game of the Week. He wanders the world, Europe, Asia, just about everywhere. As he says, he's the worldly fellow, another W. He's also wonderful, a wonderful friend to so many of us, a great father to Ben, a great family man, and a wonderful husband to Sharon. What a great couple they make. And it's been wonderful to watch Fred blossom over the years, so happy, so engaged, and so, well, wonderful. Wacky. Yes, Fred can be a bit wacky. Did you know he's the #1 Fanalo? Yes, Fred loves Barry Manilow. And only because Sharon loves Fred does she put up with it, and she'll attest to that. Fred's socks are legendary and wacky. He wore crazy socks before it was trendy, and he'll never give it up. Well, my time is just about up. So, in congratulating Fred on his well-deserved recognition, another W, let's close with a few words as sung by Mr. Manilow himself. Fred, we can't smile without you. We'd love to spend a weekend in New England with you. Could it be magic that you won this award? Yes, it's a miracle. Sure as I'm standing here, that's a minor hit. Fred, you write the songs, and it looks like you made it. You made it through the rain. Even now, while we're trying to get that feeling again, this one's for you. Congratulations, Fred. See you at the Coco Cabana and on your tape. Well, they finally got to the W's.
Fred is always excited, ready to go, ready to work.
He's not a boss, he's a leader. There's a huge difference between that. And it really inspires people to want to work more and to want to give more.
You knew he was your manager, but he also treated you like a friend and showed you respect.
He very much knows how to find good people and then takes care of them. That's one thing Fred does really well.
He's gonna come and ask you, 50 times before the game. You know what I'm saying? Can I do anything? That's his favorite line. What can I do for you?
What can I do for you?
Anything I can help you with?
Is there anything I can do for you?
He treats the custodian like the CEO, and he treats the CEO like the custodian.
Here, Rick Malnati to my right.
Fred kind of built Game of the Week, working with Kenny and some of the other great on-camera talent and stuff. And the relationships he's built with the schools and stuff, I think this kind of goes back to just trying to tell great stories in an underserved community.
It's very important to Fred that we want to get out and show the community that Weigel Broadcasting cares.
This is where Fred really deserves the Silver Circle Award and is really, truly a Chicago broadcaster. The way he has embraced these games, the Game of the Week and the high school sports that he's presented on the Weigel stations is a true community service.
Yeah, well, we really had some really good ones. We had Derrick Rose, Jaleel Okafor, Jabari Parker. Those are 3 top NBA draft choices, and they're all National Player of the Year, all performing on Weigel Broadcasting on our Game of the Week.
Fred always made it about the kids and about the clients. That would probably be the greatest summary, and probably the goal of the company was not just to have a great game, but on a side note, he always picked the best games.
In and out, and nearly taken away. That's for the win. It's online. It's good. What a finish!
He has had such a passion for London. He was so excited when everything kind of went down for him to move there. The Worldly Fella, the pictures and the Facebook stuff and the blogging that he's done, it was just kind of the next step.
Worldly Fellow, if you would. Do you have to stick your pinky out when you say that? Worldly Fellow. It makes sense. Fred is a very educated guy. He is truly a worldly guy.
He really knows the history. So I think he wanted to take that history, and he had so much time to explore in London, that then what fun is it to have if you can't share it?
I like to think of Fred as something of a descendant of Edward R. Murrow, who famously broadcast from London during World War II and brought London home to Americans. And in so many ways, Fred is doing that himself as the Worldly Fellow. Through his writing, through his photography, through his broadcasts, he brings London and the British royal family back home to Chicago.
No, there's no slowing down. I think he wants to see everything.
If Fred had to move to the moon, I think he'd still find a way to do Game of the Week and make sure that this week's game is on the U2 Sports. It's one of the things that makes Fred great is nothing will stop him, no matter where he is, anywhere on this planet or any other one.
I can't see Fred ever stopping.
He has type A personality. He's not going to sit still for any time soon.
He's Chicago's royal watcher. Could he be Singapore's next thing? We don't know yet. He's only been there for a short time, but I wouldn't put it past him.
So Fred, I know we couldn't get Barry here to present the award. However, in the words of the immortal Barry Manilow, it looks like we made it. Congratulations, Fred.
Looks like we made it. Left each other on the way to another love.
What do you want? Okay. I'm going to warn you, though, he set a book down here. Oh, boy.
Here, Neil, I'm going to give this to you. I almost don't know where to start now that it's out about Barry Manilow. First, thank you to the TV Academy for tonight's recognition. And when I first asked Mr. Saban about doing an introduction, he said yes. And then I could see the wheels starting to move, which at times is kind of scary. And he said with a smile, "Fred, I could take this in so many different directions." Well, Neil, thank you for your kind words, for your friendship, and for the opportunities that you and Norm Shapiro have given me. And Neil, as you know, and now as this whole entire room knows, I'm a huge Barry Manilow fan. So thank you for always making sure that Barry Manilow is playing on the radio on MeTV FM. Tonight's video was made possible by the talented Chaz Alling. Chaz, we've worked together for years, since you were a student at Columbia, and you certainly know my work personality, sometimes fairly impatient. So thank you for leaving all that out of the videotape and for creating for me what will be a keepsake. And my gratitude to Steve Farber for your keen producer eye, your guidance and support all these many seasons. Well, it seems to me that what we've heard and what we will hear tonight is a bit of reflection, and that you'll hear a number of common elements from the inductees. But I think we would all agree on a couple of things. None of us does this alone. None of us is getting this recognition because we are a one-person operation. Especially in sports and station management, we are team builders. And when I look back over 30-plus years, I see a number of different teams that I've been fortunate enough to play on. The station management teams, the executive producer teams, and working anywhere in the world. Well, tonight I'm back in my hometown, so proud, in person, not via Skype, not via satellite, not WhatsApp, and I'm honored to be part of this Silver Circle class. As many of you know, this is home base of my favorite television network group, the group that has had my heart and my loyalty for the past 22 years, the Shapiro family and Weigel Broadcasting. I think we can all agree, hands down, the best place in the world to be a broadcaster from is one from Chicago. And one of my most significant broadcast relationships began more than 2 decades ago, first with the creator of Weigel Broadcasting, Howard Shapiro, and with the chairman of Weigel Broadcasting, Norm Shapiro and Lily Shea. I've been fortunate enough to work for a chairman and company who cares about the positive effect of sports on young people, who values education and a lifetime of learning, which I think is important for all broadcasters, for future broadcasters, no matter what part of the industry you're in, and certainly it's been an important part for me. And so the joyful making of this thing called Game of the Week, a journey that I've been involved with for some 18 years. As a company, we've had the opportunity to showcase some underprivileged students, some gifted, some world class, all different types of students and schools and student bodies, but they all seem to have things in common. Know that for some students, sports has been the foundation for a more stable and safe home life. For others, sports has given them discipline. And for the lucky athletes, they've developed a lifelong friendship, coach, mentor, and positive role model. Sports has been a way for many kids to go to college. And yet all of these students and student athletes want what we all want, the chance to do our very best, to be our very best, and to ultimately make our families proud. I am proud because I have my very own best production family, of which I'm going to single out a few, knowing that there are many in this room. To my director, Frank Vance. Frank, I love that you direct games like a fan, always excited about a play, as if you act like you've never seen it before. To my on-air guys, Jim Blaney, Mark Kruger, and Kenny McReynolds, and to an entire team of men and women who I've been lucky enough to work with through all these many years, you make each game look easy, as if it takes no preparation, and for that I say thank you. I've had the good fortune to hire some, to work with many. Some of you are in this room tonight. For some of you, you've branched out from broadcasting to education, to politics, to entrepreneurial ventures. And I want you to know that I see what you are creating. I know how you are changing the world for the better, one person, one project, and one issue at a time. My success has not really been my own. It has been watching you achieve things that I bet you may not have imagined when you started your own journey. And finally, to my own family. To my twin brother Lee, who's here tonight, I bet we're both thinking about our parents and the work ethic that they instilled in us. To my son Ben, you know what I think of you and your success as a security and research engineer. And to Sharon, my wife, you're the force of our family. I could not be more proud of what you have achieved as CEO of a global business. And I want to close with my favorite Winston Churchill quote, which I think applies to sports. Whether you're going into a truck doing a broadcast or you're leaving the truck saying, I wonder how that went. Churchill said, and I quote, "Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts." And I thank all of you for tonight's recognition.
Thank you, Fred. You elevated the evening, really. You elevate everything you've ever done. Going back to the options exchange. Okay, let's switch gears for a moment. Inevitably, as we are celebrating 25 years, many of our friends and colleagues have gone on ahead. And tonight we are going to honor 4 people from our industry who are no longer with us. Now, this isn't in the script, though, but it occurred to me when I got to this point, this might just be the moment to mention a man who was in our class, so many of us here, of TV broadcasters who passed on way too early. And just a thought for Chet Coppock, who just brought so much joy and energy into so many lives in the world of sports. Okay, so we begin our honorees tonight posthumously with a man whose work you have heard for decades. You could probably easily hum from memory, and you are going to definitely enjoy this videotape.
It's very fitting that Dick Marks and his orchestra performed at several televised Chicago Emmy Award shows in the 1970s and 80s, because even though his work was known worldwide, his roots were here in Chicago. This jazz pianist, arranger, and composer began playing the piano when he was a child. He launched his career in Chicago nightclubs and released several albums during the 1950s. Marks expanded his talents into advertising and, over the next couple decades, produced countless enduring commercial jingles.
My dog's bigger than your dog. My dog's faster than yours. My dog's shinier 'cause he gets kennel ration. My dog's better than yours.
It pays to have a smile that's bright, to help you look and feel just right.
Double your pleasure, double your fun with double good double mint gum.
Aren't you glad you used Dial? Aren't you glad you used Dial?
Marks's talented group of composers, jingle writers, and performers included his wife Ruth and his son Richard, who contributed vocals to many of his jingles. Throughout his career, Marks kept his Chicago connection. Sports fans, even today, are familiar with the Chicago Blackhawks fight song, Here Come the Hawks, composed by Dick Marks back in 1968.
Here come the Hawks, the mighty Blackhawks. Take the attack, yeah, and we'll back you, Blackhawks.
From sports to news, Marks wrote the news theme for Chicago's WBBM TV, a theme that was quickly picked up by other CBS stations across the nation.
Nobody does it better.
The wide-ranging talents of Marks even extended to writing the scores for TV programs and movies like A League of Their Own. And Dick Marks was in a league of his own, from keyboard to conducting to being the creative genius behind all those memorable jingles. Dick Marks defined the importance of musical contributions to the medium we celebrate with the Silver Circle.
And accepting the honor tonight for Dick Marks is his son, the equally talented performer, songwriter, producer, and Grammy Award winner, Richard Marks.
Well, they left out so many commercials that my dad wrote because there's, we could do a whole evening of it. But I think we should kick off what I'm going to say with, you can finish this for me. My dad wrote, ask any mermaid you happen to see, what's the best tuna? Right? So happy to be here with you guys tonight, and congratulations to all the honorees, and thanks to the Silver Circle Award gang for including my dad. My dad was not only the single greatest musician I ever knew, he was also very well known in this city of Chicago. I remember when I was a kid, I would see him, he would be recognized on the street sometimes. Sometimes people would come over to us at restaurants. And I think when I was about 12, I made the conscious decision that I would be Richard, because I thought he's so well known here that if I don't do that, he's forever going to be known as Big Dick, and we know what that would make me. My dad was incredibly proud of his musical legacy in this city. I miss him dearly. I wish he was here with us tonight. I'm so happy that my mother, Ruth, is here with us tonight. Happy early Mother's Day. And thank you all very much for acknowledging my dad. Have a great night.
Our next posthumous honoree is a man who made his mark as an innovative program director at ABC7, as you'll see in the video, and later general manager at WYCC, Jeff McGrath. Here's the video.
Jeff McGrath was a born broadcaster. After a degree from Drake University and private production company job, he landed at WLS-TV in 1967 as a promotion writer with rapid advancement to show producer. That's where his creativity flourished. He helped develop the wildly popular prize movie with Ione, quickly copied by stations around the country. Then, as public affairs director, McGrath supervised an iconic string of shows. His keen understanding of audiences led station leadership to elevate him in rapid succession to executive producer, assistant program director, and ultimately program director.
I was quick at even that time to recognize his leadership skills.
Former VP and GM Phil Boyer remembers McGrath's enormous impact on the market, a string of unprecedented success from morning to night.
Creativity and Jeff McGrath go together. This programmer was an excellent person at creating, and not only creating, but executing great productions.
Early in the day, it was his baby, the iconic AM Chicago. In the afternoon, it was the 3 o'clock movie. McGrath had a knack knowing which big screen blockbusters would win with viewers and took great pride negotiating deals with Hollywood studios.
And Channel 7 reigned with its afternoon movie, mainly because of Jeff's purchasing the right films and, even more importantly, creating the right themes for those movies that we owned.
His leadership was also key in the scoring Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune, helping cement evening access success. Even so, it was McGrath's EQ as a leader that set him apart.
People liked Jeff as a boss and as a subordinate. Jeff was not just a business associate, but he was a friend to everyone around him.
And long before anyone could have ever imagined something called the Me Too movement, he was promoting women in positions of power like no one ever before. When you worked for him, you were judged by job performance, not gender.
Despite my age, despite my gender, without hesitation, really with great confidence, he promoted me to program manager, and that was a position I enjoyed for the next 16 years.
Protégés became programming powerhouses, moving on to enormous careers, launching national shows, running A&E, the Food Network, and Paramount Television. But an eye for on-air talent became his hallmark, hiring and honing then unknown names like Steve Edwards, Sandy Freeman, and Rob Weller. Still, McGrath's biggest find would be a person eventually known by one name: Oprah.
So Jeff McGrath was my mentor and arranged a special internship for me at the station from high school through part of college. He used to drive me back and forth and confided in me about his day. And I remember when he got Oprah's tape and how excited he was. He thought she was spectacular and wanted to hire her on the spot.
But in a racially divided city like Chicago, back then, it would be an understatement to say McGrath hit a brick wall when he brought Oprah's tape to his bosses.
The station manager at the time refused to even look at Oprah's tape. So Jeff went over his head to the general manager.
Behind the scenes, McGrath championed Oprah Winfrey, and she was soon hosting AM Chicago before building international acclaim.
A full hour of AM Chicago, weekdays at 9.
He left WLS-TV in 1984, taking over as president and partner of Center City Studios, modernizing the facility where Paul Harvey's segments were produced. Then, in 1986, the Home Shopping Network came calling, a cable behemoth looking to expand into broadcasting, and for someone to lead the way. They found their man. McGrath became chairman of Silver King Communications, building a network of broadcast stations across the country. He made sure each location did more than sell, insisting on locally produced programming. The station group McGrath built became so valuable, HSN eventually sold it. Meantime, McGrath started consulting, eventually serving as general manager for Channel 20. Even then, his competitive nature as a programmer came shining through.
Jeff had such a passion for broadcasting and a positive can-do attitude. It spoke volumes that he chose to take the office next to mine at our studios rather than the fancy downtown office with a view.
He salvaged otherwise ignored PBS gems which weren't being aired across the street and turned WYCC into a valuable, viable contender.
Jeff quickly changed course, turning WYCC into the destination station with the addition of BBC World News and a host of other national and international documentaries and series.
Outside of broadcasting, others benefited by McGrath's leadership as caucus chairman for the Village of Northfield, and years behind the lighting board, on stage, and producing Winnetka's Village Follies, always inspiring others.
And that is the effort of everybody in here. So I thank you all, and thank you from the depths of my heart.
Longtime friend, best-selling author Herb Cohen put it best in a 1983 interview.
Jeff McGrath is the best that we aspire to be.
Accepting Jeff McGrath's Silver Circle honor will be his wonderful wife, Joan. Joan McGrath.
Wow. This would have meant the world to Jeff. And Scott Steele, thank you for putting together that video so eloquently. It's certainly a singular thrill for me and our son Andrew. Come here, honey. Jeff ran 14 television stations nationwide as CEO and board chairman of Silver King, the broadcast subsidiary of the Home Shopping Network. But it was his 3 decades at channels 7, 26, and 60 that gave him the most joy. Local television was his passion. And as everyone here who knew him will attest, his endless litany of proud and often repeated stories, Jeff was never one to forego retelling and lengthening a good tale, came from his days at WLS, AM Chicago, Oiga Amiga, The Feminine Franchise, themed movie blocks. Most memorable was the one that he and promo director Brandon Tartikoff came up with, Gorilla My Dreams Week. Music and dance specials at Great America, his Emmy for producing Burglary, the Easiest Crime, which was not about Chicago politics, and so many others. I met Jeff at Channel 7. I was the first PA on the first program he produced, the prize movie With I Own, a program far more memorable for ditziness than for content. Having worked with him, I am most proud of his track record for mentorship, as Scott Steele, Fred Weintraub will so attest. In the days when producers were men and secretaries were girls, we remember those days, Jeff was an ardent forerunner in mentoring and promoting women. Bonnie Kaplan, Penny Rothheiser, Brooke Bailey, Libet Richter, Diane Cotton, Cindy Sapera, and is a very, very long list. Jeff was many things. He was a generous teacher. He was a side-splitting and generally tasteful raconteur, a loving father and husband. But most of all, Jeff was a broadcaster whom our cherished friend Rob Feeder described as honest, unpretentious, and brilliant. On his behalf, Andrew and I are indebted to the TV Academy for this honor, and we congratulate the other really awesome inductees, a proud company to be a part of. I don't know if Jeff is sporting a halo where he is, but I do know for sure that for all eternity, he will be wearing his silver circle.
Our final posthumous honorees tonight are 2 broadcast journalism pioneers, Frayne and Clifton Utley. The video.
Frayne and Clifton Utley forged a new frontier in both radio and television back when broadcast news was in its infancy. Clifton's radio career began in 1939 on the University of Chicago Roundtable broadcasts on NBC. And he began a 15-minute news and commentary show that would stay on the air with the same sponsor for 15 years. In 1940, Frayne Utley hosted a regular, issue-oriented talk show on CBS Radio. She was well prepared to take her opinions on world affairs to the airwaves, having traveled extensively in Europe in the 30s with Clifton in his role as director of the Chicago Council on Foreign Relations. Throughout the war and after, it was almost impossible to avoid Clifton Utley on the air. 7:55 a.m., noon, and 5 p.m., Monday through Friday. When television came to Chicago in 1948, NBC naturally turned to Clifton Utley to be their newsman. WNBQ launched its first live television broadcast on election night 1948 with Clifton as the telecommunicator.
And that, friends, will have to be telecommentary for tonight. Be with us again tomorrow at this same time, and until then, this is Clifton Utley again bidding you good night.
In 1949, Utley hosted a 12-minute newscast produced to convince NBC executives that a regular nightly TV newscast was viable, and it worked. Soon, WNBQ had its 5-star final 10 p.m. newscast hosted by Clifton Utley. Immensely popular, at its peak, it enjoyed a 70 share.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's special features the coming buyer's market in automobiles. Then a new department, the sports section. And finally, if we don't run fresh out of time, which quite likely we may, we'll have a piece on trade across the Iron Curtain in Europe.
NBC corporate took note and in 1953 invited Clifton Utley to host what would eventually become NBC Nightly News. But an embolism struck down Clifton when preparing for a newscast. The paralysis that resulted made his returning to television impossible. Frayne Utley immediately stepped in to carry on the Sunday evening news and commentary, not surprising, since she and Clifton had hosted a news and commentary program on WNBQ TV, and Frayne Utley was presenting a weekly commentary on NBC's Monitor Radio. In all these broadcasts, the Utley style was not just to report what happened, but to put it into context, to explain what it meant, so viewers and listeners would come away understanding the news. Frayne and Clifton Utley, broadcast news pioneers and treasured members of the Television Academy's Silver Circle.
The TV Academy's Pioneer Award for Frayne and Clifton Utley will be accepted by their son, Jonathan. Jonathan?
When this honor was bestowed on Frayne and Clifton, it prompted the Utley family to go to the basement and see what we could find in the way of photographs and scripts. The little we found was turned over to Diana Borey, Jim Dish, and Cheryl Stusky, who worked their magic to create this touching and beautiful video. And a special thanks, of course, to Carol Marine for voicing the video. As we went through the junk people find in their basements, it caused us to think about stuff you don't think about sometimes. And that was, what was their career really like? And three things came to my mind anyway. The first is that in this early day of broadcast journalism, they spent a lot of time on an issue. Frayne Utley's half-hour radio broadcast on one issue. Their Sunday night news that went for 15 years on radio, had a 5-minute newscast. Most recent news, 1 minute from Charles A. Stevens and Company, their longtime sponsor, then 8-minute news analysts on one topic. Today that would be a podcast, I presume, not a news broadcast. Frayne and Clifton Utley, secondly, what we came to the conclusion was, were local journalists. You ask Clifton Utley, how should I get into this business? For those high school students, those who are still here, and that's a question he often got, and he'd say one thing: you start on the police beat, you start locally, you start going down to the police precinct, find out what happened overnight, you learn the territory that way. But their lives were touched by huge international events. The rise of Nazi Germany, World War II, Berlin blockade, airlift, Cold War, Korean War. The time when they cut their teeth in journalism, and their focus and their commentaries was not exclusively, but often in the area of foreign policy. Something that was perhaps a little unusual to see in a local broadcast in the great American Midwest. It even got into television. Ernst Reuter was the mayor of West Berlin, a flashpoint in Soviet-American relations, and he was visiting Chicago, so Clifton said, we'll put him on the air. WNBQ's local news. We'll have the mayor of Berlin on the air. He didn't speak any English, which was a problem, potentially. So Clifton would ask him a question in German. Clifton was fluent in German. Reuter would answer it. Clifton would translate for the audience, ask him another question. Not the usual thing you'd see on an evening newscast. One point, something broke. Real breaking news. But they used the phrase, this just in. They ripped it off the teletype, handed it to him in the studio. He read it. The Soviets had declared something, paused for about 2 seconds and said, now what does this mean for the United States? Threw out the rest of the script and launched into a minute explanation of what this means to the viewers in Chicago. That was something else that we don't often see today. His last broadcast, Clifton Utley's last broadcast, was 15 short commentaries on the radio dealing with the impact of the Soviet Sputnik satellite on the United States. The third thing we noticed was that Frayne Utley was perhaps an anomaly. She was on radio and television speaking to tens of thousands of people in an era when men did the news, the sports, and the weather. This is not to say that Frayne's broadcast career opened up the doors to women in journalism. It did not. That would take much more time. But you do sow some seeds. How many we don't know. What we do know is that when Clifton Utley died in 1979, a woman wrote Frayne Utley a letter. And she said she grew up in Chicago listening to Frayne Utley on the radio and the television. And she was so impressed with what Frayne Utley had to say that she named her daughter, currently in law school, Frayne. So the Utley family is very pleased and thankful to the Academy and the Silver Circle that when they looked for pioneers in broadcast journalism, they gave this beautiful award to both Clifton and Frayne Utley. Thank you.
Talk about old friends night. Our next honoree is the inimitable Peter Nolan. And here to present Peter is his son, a Northwestern Medill Master's graduate and former newsman himself, Steve Nolan. Steve?
So I'm going to keep this very brief. And, when they told me I had 2 minutes, I kind of laughed. I said, I'm really new media, so I do this in 144 characters, right? So, I had a whole bunch that I was going to say, and now I'm kind of thinking, I just want to tell you the story that's going on table 10. I'm so proud that there are 3 generations of Nolans sitting there, and particularly my boys who get to see kind of what their grandfather did for a living. But right now, I actually have to Snapchat them because they're not really paying attention. I see those phones underneath the table. So what I want to tell my boys is, you know, despite the fact that you really kind of know your grandfather in a certain way, and he's this likable guy, and, you know, at one point he had this career that you really don't know much about. And there are two things that I want to kind of say about my father and what I think really kind of drove his expertise in his career and what kind of really kind of made him who he was on camera and really to this day. One is my father is a born storyteller, and if you've ever had the chance to have a drink with him, you know he's really good at telling stories. The second one is my father really was truly passionate about the inner workings of City Hall and politics in general. And I think the video you're about to see is really kind of a way to highlight that for y'all.
I got a job as a summer replacement writer in Chicago at NBC.
Yeah.
So we packed up and came out here, and I was able to go. They had told me, they said, it's only a temporary job, but it looks like we're expanding.
Woke up this morning with the blahs, moaning and groaning into the exclamation, "My God, it's happened." I'd like to send the legislators, Mayor Byrne and Governor Thompson, a message. In my years as a newsman, I have come into contact with all kinds of police officers all over the country. Chicago cops are a special breed. There's few that you feel lukewarm about. You either love them or hate them.
NBC was really, I was there the first week I got there, Martin Luther King was assassinated. And there was rioting in Chicago. Then in May, Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. The Democratic Convention, that was pretty wild.
Let's face it, the real way to peace is through hugging and kissing. That's my viewpoint. I'm Peter Nolan.
I spent a lot of time covering the city council, and then I was sent to Springfield a lot to cover the state legislature. And what I find is different from today is in Springfield in those days, and I'm talking about the 1970s, Republicans and Democrats got along a little better. They were at opposing sides, different views on how to do things, on policy. But they compromised. They would, I'll give you this, you give me that. They were friendly. I think today the politicians are so angry at each other.
Just a routine transfer, putting these guys 30 miles away from their home base, part of Mayor Byrne's neighborhood improvement program. The card game goes on. That's my viewpoint. I'm Peter Nolan. That's my viewpoint. I'm Peter Nolan.
Thank you, Peter.
Yes.
And thank you for watching That's the News. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Photo on? What do we do now? Oh, here.
Past your bed.
Okay. Now I talk?
Yeah, now you talk.
Okay. You know, I got up here without stumbling or falling down, and I didn't have the, you know, the Florida shuffle, as I call it. And you know, for a guy my age, that's huge. I want to thank my son, Steve, for the nice introduction. I'd like to thank my granddaughter, Anna Mazzucchelli, who produced the main part of this tape that was shown a few years ago. She's going to graduate tomorrow from University of Kentucky, and she did this a couple of years ago and got an A on it. I don't know how that happened. But anyway, and thanks for Steve for editing down for this thing tonight. I want to say I am very grateful and thankful and honored to receive this award, especially with the Utleys and Dolores Meebane, and Eddie Collins, and all these other great people. It's really great. And, you know, I think it was last fall I got a call from Carol Marine, and she said, would you, you've been selected for the Silver Circle, and would you accept this award? And the first thing I thought about was, wait a minute, this is some mistake because I'm too old. The statute of limitations has run on me. But then something happened. My old on-the-air television live ego took over. My after voice came up. Why, Carol, I'd be delighted to accept the Silver Circle Award. Thank you, Carol, so much. That's my old Bill Curtis imitation. But seriously, it is a great honor, and I'm very grateful. There's a lot of great broadcasters in the Silver Circle, and I'm proud and I'm honored to be listed among their names, all these great names you've heard tonight. And if I might, I'd like to take a moment to pay a tribute to my wife, Karen Coleman Nolan, who died in 2011. We were married 48 years. She was a wonderful wife and mother, grandmother, 6 kids, 15 grandchildren. She was there through all the crazy, hectic television years, always kind, patient, understanding, and forgiving. And through it all, she became a pretty good critic of television news, and I'm glad I listened to her. God rest her sweet soul. Thank you, Bea, and thank you, Television Academy.
Our next honoree is Monica Schneider, and here to, there's a whole table, right. And here to induct Monica are Emmy Award-winning WGN reporter Gaynor Hall, and Emmy Award-winning WGN producer and herself a 2015 Silver Circle inductee, Pam Grimes.
Monica Schneider is a nitpicky, sometimes very scary, pain in the...
Hey, easy pain. Now, we know in this line of work that those are supreme compliments. And here are some of the other words that have been used to describe Monica in the letter supporting her Silver Circle nomination. She's been called knowledgeable, laser-focused, and unflappable.
Unassuming, an inspiration, a master storyteller, resilient, but most of all, a friend.
Over the years, Monica has dropped many glorious nuggets of wisdom on me. And my personal favorite is MYOF, which stands for Make Your Own Fun. So, Sub-Zero Live Shot, MYOF. Complete on-air technical disaster, MYOF. Tribune files for bankruptcy.
WTF? That's Monica. Do you know she also brought her dog to her job interview at Chicagoland Television? You can talk to her about the rest of that story.
Facts here. Monica Schneider, there's no doubt that she would have been successful in any profession that she chose. But we are so thankful that you chose this one. And now, here are some highlights from a career that is Decades in the making and still going strong.
Oh my God, that was hysterical. Another moment to be kind of nervous to start with. So you'd go to New York, and it'd be promo weekend, which NBC affiliates around the country would do for their anchor staff.
Clearly, the team you have grown to trust from Rockford. Clearly, the team you have grown to trust.
I'm sorry, but I did something during that one. Okay. The whole thing was really a trip, I do have to say. I just don't like being on camera. I never have, unless I can just be sort of talking and focusing on the audience, the one person in my mind. The whole idea of, oh, look at me, I'm on camera.
Dave?
I'm sorry.
Dave, you're getting carried away.
I'm sorry, Monica.
All right.
Why I thought I could go and be a television journalist is beyond me, but for some reason I did think I could do that. And I talked to people in Milwaukee, that's where I was going to school, in the industry, and I got some really great advice. Really, we're here to serve the viewers.
I met Monica in Rockford in 1990. Everybody loved Monica.
A search is on for answers in South Beloit and Janesville tonight. It is
Monica owned Rockford, and I mean owned it, like fan clubs. Bars would have Monica nights.
Well, I don't remember about a bar night. Maybe they didn't invite me. You know, that could have happened.
Yes, it was nuts. I just don't know what it was. I mean, and if I did know, I would bottle it and sell it. Yeah.
The CLTV thing, it intrigued me because the way they framed it, it wasn't about making stars of people, it was about stories.
And the guy had the gun out of the window like this. That would apparently eat right into Demon Dog. The size of the problem this garbage strike is creating in Chicagoland.
It was always about doing it differently. We weren't the downtown stations that had all the resources, but we had the drive.
Well, certainly can't beat this. Great day, great car, great cause. Meet Vivian Lund.
There were other stories along the way, just sort of fun stories.
Mayor of Warrenville.
Yeah, piggy, 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 piggy.
The Cubs are the champions of the Central.
What would you say the state of hell is right about now?
Well, I think it's let's see, I think it's cooling down considerably.
There were big opportunities.
So you weren't mayor of Chicago, and you weren't an attorney. What would you be?
Maybe a journalist. I'd be sitting there with interviewing you.
Good evening, I'm Monica Schneider. Thanks for joining us here front and center.
The years I had the privilege of doing the talk show, Front and Center, that was an opportunity to really kind of hear from viewers and have a conversation. I did enjoy that because it was a place to hold their feet to the fire.
Got a bone to pick with you. Hold on, please. OJ, as you know, is accused of murdering his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her...
All the trial coverage I've had the ability to do, I have found most interesting because I did think about becoming a lawyer at one point in time.
The jurors are being told that's not part of it.
She is amazing. I mean, she does her homework. She is on top of it. She listens to everything.
She is a serious journalist. But, I mean, and that's not that she doesn't have fun.
And like any pet or hobby, you need to be willing to take on the responsibility. Obviously, I've got a way to go.
Now let's check on traffic. Monica made a mad dash for the helicopter. She's got details for it.
I do, and that light rain you're talking about, it's pitter-pattering on the lovely windshield up here, making it a little...
It's hard to believe that that much time has gone by, but then you start thinking about the work and the people, and I guess it could be that many years.
I like working with her because she made me better as a director because I was afraid of her. I just wanted to be as good at my job as she was at her job.
Update you on the situation down in the Loop this afternoon and evening.
I mean, you've really shined, Monica, and your endurance tells a lot about who you are and what you are as a journalist and as an anchor. Girl, you deserve it.
It's a bit overwhelming. Gosh, somebody thought the work I did was good enough to be included in all of this. Well, at the end of the day, I'm just humbled. Just humbled. Well, first of all, thank you to Gaynor and Pam. You guys are the best, really, truly. Mike D'Angelo, who put this piece together, photographer and editor extraordinaire, who I worked with when he started out, and I had to yell at him a lot because he almost got us killed a couple times, but that's another story. Tom Vodik, who's here, head of creative for WGN Television. We worked together back in the day in Rockford, and there would be no Rockford video except for Tom because he found it in his basement. I was stupid and had my video in the attic. It doesn't hold well in attics, so anyway. This is just nothing that I could ever have anticipated, expected, worked for, thought of. Those guys came up with this. It's just really nothing that I would have come up with growing up at Cheesehead in Beertown, I'm telling you. A late-to-learn English daughter of German immigrants with an underlying social phobia about talking to others. So really, TV news, what was I thinking? Looking back, it's really been quite the journey. It's amazing to look back, really. There's just so many moments, and I can't thank the Silver Circle enough for including me. It's making me feel kind of old at points because there is a lot to think back about, but you know, it's kind of cool to look back too and look at where you've been. But it really has been quite a journey to come to this particular moment. And especially when I think of, since leaving Rockford behind, where it's consistently highly rated newscasts, I privileged to be a part of that, to leave that behind, to come to Chicago to explore cable news and the challenges thereof, the many challenges that continue, going from being a household name in Rockford to being grateful if somebody recognizes my face. But that's all okay. However, I have often joked, I'm going to write a book. It's going to be called The Unknown Anchor. And people that have heard me say that over the years, I just want you to know I've made some progress on it. I now have a subtitle. That subtitle being One Woman's Journey Through Local TV News, Bad Hair and Bad Lighting Be Damned. And we just saw some examples of the hair. I mean, oh my God. And it's actually a thing in TV news, as those of us who work in it know. It's a constant aggravation. But I bet you never heard of forced perms. It's a thing. Management decides your hair doesn't look right. All of a sudden you have a salon appointment. I come out looking like a poodle. And my news director says to me, can we get rid of it? I'm like, perm means permanent, growing and cutting. But it wasn't just me, the woman. It happened to the men too. We had a reporter, great guy, but I don't think they liked how his ears looked attached to his head. So he was sent in for a perm. When he came out, the photographers were merciless. Hey, goat head, get in here, cut your track. Poor guy. Anyway, as for the work, I was always driven to challenge myself. It wasn't about competing with the person next over, none of that. It was getting beyond the social fears, trying to do better, trying to give viewers more than just a recitation of the facts, giving them something more creative, working to try to write better, be more creative, and of course, moving past my latent fears of people and asking tough questions, which that was kind of baptism by fire early on as a young reporter in Milwaukee when I scored a sit-down with a notorious police chief, Google Harold Breyer, oh my God. sitting in that office with my photographer, and I asked him something or another in the course of the interview, and suddenly he was like, turn off the camera. My photographer and I were both like 23 years old or something. We turned it off. He laid into me and blew up because I asked a question that he did not want to have to answer. I think I held it together fairly well, but all I remember about the rest of that day is I sat in a sauna somewhere. Just flash forward a few years, I'm in Chicago, and I happened to interview a priest, a well-known local priest who was known for writing these sort of sex romance novel things. And I dared to ask him, is that really appropriate sort of work for a priest? He blew up. I went home and felt I was going to get struck by lightning, couldn't sleep that night, and got up really early the next day and went to Mass and begged for forgiveness. So anyway, Chicago part of my journey has also included suddenly being part of that call-in talk show Front and Center, which initially I briefly wanted, geez, is this my destiny? I'm going to be like the thin white Oprah? Not quite, but that's okay. It was a learning curve for sure, and one of my bosses at the time, who goes by the last name of Dish, I remember him calling me into the office one day and saying, Monica, we're getting some complaints from the male guests when they're on the show because you're cutting them off. Well, Jim, the producer's in my ear. We've got to go to break. What am I supposed to do? He goes, well, yeah, but you're just cutting them off, and it's really kind of harsh. And I said, well, would you be saying this if I was a guy, for God's sake? And he was always great about it. He was a really nice guy. And I walked out of there, and I thought about it for a while. I developed a great technique after that. Interviewing male guests who won't shut up, and I've got to go to break. I cut them off, but I was smiling the whole time. Works to this day, though it might not work after this, now that the secret's out. Anyway, I do miss that Chat Fest opportunity that we had. It was a lot of fun interviewing a wide breadth of people, not just for the viewers, but for myself. I mean, the things I learned, the people I spoke to, it was a lot of fun. And taking those viewers' calls, letting them vent, that was really something, because you never knew what you were going to get hit with. There wasn't much of a delay back then, and so sometimes things got on air, and you're just thinking like, oh, did that just happen? But it did, and in a way, really, if you think about it, it was kind of like social media before social media, so it was cool. I was glad to have been a part of it. And then there were some missed opportunities. One big one that my longtime co-anchor, Bill Mahler, and I both feel we really missed a big one at CLTV, and that would be, there was a proposed ad campaign at one point. I think somebody remembers already. A proposed ad campaign during the height of the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal. And the slogan was going to be, watch our Bill and Monica. It never made air, oh well. Bill still says, Moni, we could have been big. Like maybe. There are disappointments along the way in television news, obviously. And for the younger people who received those awards earlier, if you stick it out, you better be aware that that is part of it. It doesn't always go the way you think it will. There are times that are tough for all of us in television news. It's just the way it is. It's ratings driven, it's personality driven, it depends who's in management, do they like you, do they not? There are just so many things involved. There can be job changes you didn't want or expect, having stories and interviews you worked really hard on, never make air, you don't really get an explanation. It's difficult, it makes you start to doubt yourself. I'll be the first to admit it. But it's also a very spiritual journey if you choose to have it be that. And in that you can look at it, choose not to be bitter, and just get up again the next day and try again. There's always a new opportunity. And you know, it really does come and go around. There's a new opportunity constantly. You just don't know when it's going to be coming. So if you're sitting by and being upset because of the story you lost or whatever, it's just really not worth it. It can be tough, though, if you put your heart and soul into it. I will say that. I've heard it said that our business is a mean business. Yeah, it can be, but it can also be a wonderful business. And I had a friend who worked in sports, female in sports, who had it tough at times, and she said to me once, brilliant advice, the job will never love you back. And that's true at times as well. But one thing I've learned is that I hope we can all do is that we can show a little more love and be more cognizant of those around us and not just look at things from our own point of view, but you know, how others feel before we go and criticize, before we go and gossip, before we decide, oh, that story's crap or whatever. You know, it could be a better place. And I think we owe it to ourselves to at least try. But as far as that thing about the job never loving you back, I have to say at this moment, being included in all of this feels a little bit like love, so it's pretty cool. I have to say thanks for that. And there's just one more thing. Going into this, I know that some say or think, I mean, clearly I've run into it, getting this award is kind of like a nail in your career coffin. I seriously had one colleague who I love dearly come up to me and congratulate me on my Silver Shovel Award. And he was not talking about some great city council investigation I did. It's like, it took me a while to think about, something to come back, which I never did come back. I should have said, well, you're just jealous. And secondarily, I started in the business at age 10, so at 25 years later, you do the math, I'm going to outlive you. And maybe all of you. And all the while fervently praying to the gods of good lighting. Thank you.
A lot of hot talent over there at WGN, right, Larry? Now, you folks at WGN, my team, you came up with a great idea it's a year and a half ago, Man of the People, right? That was a great idea. Well, you know what? You're copycats, because I'm about to introduce the original Man of the People. Our last honoree tonight is Bob Wallace. And by the way, if they don't include in your video that time you were in the sauna and then you jumped into the freezing cold water, I'm going to be very disappointed. I want to see that again, Bob. Here to introduce Bob, and I'm sure this video is going to be great, because every single thing Bob Wallace ever did was absolutely over the top, at a time when TV wasn't like that at all. Introducing Bob is a man who tagged along for many of those adventures, his son, Bob Wallace III. Bob?
It's great to see my father, added to the Silver Circle. And, growing up and seeing my dad do these crazy things on TV was kind of remarkable, sitting there as a kid going, wow, that's Dad on TV. What's he doing today? I didn't hear about that. My mother, she didn't know if he was going to come home dead that day with some of the stuff he did. Some of the stuff we couldn't find to put in the video was the skydiving, the riding the motocross motorcycle, trying to do a jump and wiping out big time on it. It was fun to see it. I did get to go on a lot of the stories with him and got to do a lot of interesting things myself. And later in life, I will mention that, we sit around, we watch TV, we flip through channels, and as we're flipping through those channels, he's mentioning, I can't find anything else but reality TV. After a moment, as I thought about it, I said, Dad, you're to blame for reality TV. As you can see in the video, he thoroughly enjoyed being in front of the camera and having fun.
See Best, CBS on Channel 12. And now, the 11th hour news with Bob Wallace.
Good evening. Former Republican presidential candidate Barry Goldwater told an audience of Albuquerque, New Mexico Republicans tonight that the Democratic Party has become captive of the radical left. Good evening. I'm Bob Wallace. This is Channel 13 Color News. Locally, a double-death crash here in the capital city has raised the Hoosier Highway weekend death toll to 10. Hello, I'm Bob Wallace. This is the news. President Nixon still wants Judge Harold Carswell to be a U.S. Supreme Court justice, but 34 senators do not.
From the newsroom, the TV2 News at 10, with Bob Wallace and the TV2 News team.
With the announcement that 2 of the subpoenaed White House tapes do not exist, even a few people on Mr. Nixon's side of the political fence are talking about his resignation or impeachment.
I did lots of serious news stories over the years, but what people really remember, though, is the fun stuff. Take a look.
There's one little rope between me and oblivion.
As you can see, they've got me on a safety line, and below me is 250 feet of nothing to the Hancock building roof. It's thick nothing. It's thick nothing? You know that like Say hello to Harry! Say hello to Bill! Say hello to Walter! Well, I could be right there in the newsroom because I'm surrounded by turkeys. You will. Goodbye. Although I'll cry, ain't that a shame? My tears fell like rain.
This is WBBM TV, Sunday Night Television Magazine.
Just got to say this, Bob, you're terrific.
The Shannon Rovers have been around for more than 6 decades now. I'm proud to say that I've been a Rover for a dozen of those years. What's it like to be a Shannon Rover on St. Patrick's Day?
This is kind of fun. This is live television going down the hill, and if you can stop, we got the ski school here.
You had fun, didn't you? Yeah, it was nice out there.
There was no way Director Sato would have to ask me twice to try my hand at kabuki. I have been fascinated by it for years. I am being transformed into a fierce Japanese warlord.
Now that's the costume. Now I've got to work on the voice and the movement. Ooh, not quite.
It's too hot. I burned my lip.
Tried much. Vegemite, by the way, is horrible stuff. Oh, is that terrible? Look at this big Louisiana oyster.
Bob Wallace is going to put that claim to the test today as we find out where's Wallace. Bob?
You missed! Ain't missed for long.
This is Bob Wallace at Bigsby and Carruthers, showing off his suspenders for Channel 2 News. Hey, Lester, you got yours on?
Well, indeed I do. You do.
There's the sound of that 4-cam V12 engine. The most spine-tingling heavy metal music there is.
Kind of a tight fit.
You get a feeling of power up here, believe me. I feel like Captain Bligh. We're on the Bounty. This is just part of what's happening here tonight.
Watch this. My ankle is bent, something you wouldn't believe. How much does anime weigh? 8,000 pounds.
Keep on walking. Where the hell am I going? Slow it down.
It took a while, but it finally paid off.
Do you miss football?
I played 16 years, and it was long enough.
Did you really bite somebody in a huddle? Somebody told me you bit in a pile-up. That you bit somebody once?
I'm gonna.
Oh, he bit me.
After parting company with Channel 2, I became my own boss, producing and presenting industrial and informational videos for a number of years. The glamour of it all. I also hosted a show on Chicago's municipal cable channel, Chicago Works.
On behalf of Mayor Daley, welcome to this special edition of Chicago Works. 1, 2.
I had a great career in television, but what I really missed was those live shots. You never knew what was going to happen.
Wait a minute, I'm out of control. We're going to try to talk to Lanny some more. Huh? All right, wait a minute. Ah!
Well, to borrow a phrase from Walter Cronkite, that's the way it is, Saturday, November 6th. I'm Bob Wallace. Good night. We'll see you again next week.
You did a good job.
You may have a chance in TV, you know. Hi, I'm Bob Wallace, and as Chevy Chase would say, you're not. So, first, probably 3 years ago, I got a call from Cheryl Stutsky, who I used to work with at Channel 2. and she said, would you like to be considered for the Silver Circle? And I said, oh yeah, I remember that, yeah. So I'll send you the paperwork. I filled out the forms. About a year or so went by. I ran into Cheryl somewhere, and I said, I guess I didn't make it. She said, oh, no, you never get in on the first ballot. Okay. Now I feel like the Veterans Committee has finally put me in before it's too late. And I do want to thank Jim and Cheryl and all the folks, Rebecca at the Academy. I feel like I should have an Oscar here. I thank the Academy for... but it is an honor, and it is really something. It reminds me of something my grandson Blake, who's over there in the corner, when I was doing the Chicago Work Show for the mayor's office, we were walking down Wabash Avenue, and the train was going overhead. And I was on Chicago cable, so people in Chicago could see me all the time. And people say, hey, Bob, I saw your story, and you know. And Blake, he's probably about 5, 6 years old at the time. He looks up at me and says, Doc, are you famous or something? And it was a lot of fun. And the funny thing is, when I did that show for the mayor's office, it was on Channel 23, and for some reason, Channel 2 went on Channel 22 on the cable systems. So it was one click away, and people say, hey, I saw you on Channel 2 last night. I haven't worked in Channel 2 for 20 years, you know. I know, I saw you. And, you know, and Bob says about some of the things that he used to do. I remember one time that we were at ice racing on motorcycles up in Lake Zurich somewhere, and he's probably 15 years old, and he tags along, and he asked the guy, he says, can I ride one of those? And they had these bikes with, motorcycles with screws and nuts and bolts into the tires to make them grip. And the guy says, you know how to, oh yeah, sure, I know how to do it. I didn't know he knew how to ride a motorcycle. And the next thing I know, he's out there and he's going over this ice course, and he said, hey, who's a new driver? He's pretty good. And it was him. Another time we were up at Lake Geneva, I was doing a story on off-road racing, and they had a course set up at a racetrack up there, and we went and did our pictures of all that stuff. And we're up in the press box doing interviews and stuff, and I'm watching, guys are looking out the window and they're saying, geez, look at that guy in that little white car. Boy, he's really doing good. Wow, whoa, look at that little white car. I said, wait a minute, I got a little white car. And I look out the window, and there he and his buddy are in it. It was a little Opel Isuzu. It was a German car made in Japan, sold by a Buick dealer. And these guys are running it around the racetrack. So I said, we better hurry up with these interviews because I got to get my car back. But we did have a lot of fun. That was him, by the way, in that little shot of the MG. That was a car club thing, and he was the guy next to me. And Terry, the sauna was in there, and it was funny when you said that. That was up in Wisconsin. We did a story with some folks that went up there snowmobiling and stuff, and I spent, and in those days, they'd let me take a crew and, you know, go off 3, 4, 5 days, and, you know, as long as you came back with a story a day, they were happy. And we went snowmobiling, and we did all that stuff, ice fishing and all that. And they said, well, tonight we're going to take a sauna. I said, yeah, it sounds like fun. And, you know, Cameron said, geez, we've been working all day. Then when they said what they were going to do, he said, yeah, let's do it. Let's tape it. And the crew was just, you know, we're out there. We're freezing our butts off. We're in this little thing with rocks, and you pour water on it and it steams up. And I guess it gets up to somewhere 200 degrees or something in a sauna, they told me. And then they said, I saw the thing. They had these carpets laid out from the sauna to the hole in the ice, which they cut with a chainsaw before we did it. And I said, what's the carpet for? And they says, oh, that's so your feet won't stick to the ice when you come out of the sauna. I said, oh, wonderful. So we run down there, and I tell you, it felt pretty good. You were so hot in there. It didn't, and it looks worse than when it was. We did another story one time. We did a series on warm weather stories in the winter. We were having a real cold spell in Chicago. When we went to the the Russian baths over on the west side. And it was all guys that day, obviously. And we got the camera in there. We ran a cord out to the truck, and everybody's in sheets and towels and stuff. And I said, look, we're going to go on live TV, so cover up, guys, okay? Yeah, sure. And they all look like Roman senators with their sheets off and on and stuff. But we went in there, and once we started broadcasting, the lens fogged up. So I reached over with the towel and wiped it on live TV. And they said, what are you doing? I said, if I don't do that, you won't be able to see me Oh, okay. So every so often as we were doing our little report, I'd wipe the lens off, and then they, you know, I was all hot in there, and they'd dump water on me and beat me with these bushes and all this kind of stuff, and I said, you know, what am I doing this for? But the New Year's dive, we did that, it kind of got to be a thing. I had to work New Year's Day. There was nothing really happening, and one of the guys that I worked with was a member of the scuba club, and they said, well, we go out to the lake and we do our first dive of the new year. So, okay, fine. And we didn't. People started calling. Are they going to do the New Year's dive again? You know. And people would. I used to get tired of the turkey story. I thought, gee, we did that last year. The news director would say, no. People are calling saying, what days are you going to go out and talk to the turkeys? The thing with the turkeys is, if you make a loud noise, they will gobble in unison. So you ask them a yes or no question, and you raise your voice at the end of it, and they go, whoa, you know. We sent another reporter who will remain unnamed out there one time to do it. I was busy, and you know, the guy at the farm told him to, you know, ask the turkeys things and so forth and so on. And he did, and the turkeys went, whoa, and he didn't know he was in camera. He says, they actually talked to me. They talked to me. He cut that out of his story. But I did at one time, I did jump out of a plane for a story, and I had to, it was one of those things, I had to set it up a nice day, two cameras, one on the ground and one in a plane, and good weather and all this. Finally, after a week of trying to set it up, we did. And we don't have that, I don't think we have that on tape. Finally, the moment of truth came. We're flying parallel. I'm in the, you know, my legs out and ready to go. Jump master says, go, Bob. And there's this long pause. And this little voice comes up, I can't do it. I can't do it. And finally there's another pause, and then there's, yeah! And I went out, and it was successful. I landed. And people asked me after this, they said, why did you leave that in there? I said, because that's part of the story. The whole part about doing some of those first-person things was to see how difficult it is for the pros. One time, I'll tell one quick story, and I'll get out of here. Stan Mikita used to come over a lot and be on Live with Johnny Morris, and I was in my kind of stuntman period, and he said, why don't you come over sometime and get in the nets with us? Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, sure. 2 days later, he called. He says, Thursday morning, 10 o'clock, be over at the stadium. And they got me in Maury Bannerman's goalie outfit, and I went out there, and I can skate, not well. I have a grandson who's a good hockey player, and he knows how bad that was for me. And I got out there, and they started shooting pucks at me, and I'm, you know, trying to stop them and all that. And Dennis Hull, if you remember Dennis Hull, he had a slap shot that was unbelievable. And I'm there, and I hear this, uh-oh, I think I'm in trouble. Mikita stands over, and he says, watch out, he doesn't know where they're going either. And at the end of this, I had it set up that they would get at the blue line, shoot one puck at a time at me. Okay, and I'll do my Bob Wallace stopping pucks for Channel 2 News. Well, unbeknownst to me, the cameraman and they got together, and I said, okay, I'm ready to do the close, and I get ready, and all of a sudden, from the blue line comes 30 pucks all at once. And it was, Bob Wallace getting killed for Channel 2 News, you know. But it was a much better close than the one I would have did. And I got to thank a couple of people. Mike Klingel, who put this tape together, and as we're doing it, he says, geez, you should do a weekly show of, you know, reminiscing with Wallace. We got so much stuff we couldn't get in there. And there's a lot of stuff that just is hard to get. And my wife, Linda, when I would be on the news and should be, when we finally got a VCR recorder from at home, a little VHS recorder, if she heard them saying, coming up after the break, Wallace should hit the record button, and that's why we saved some of the things on VHS. And recently, John Hawk up at the Libertyville Public Library had the old equipment to transfer the VHS to the digital stuff. And I say the digital stuff, I don't know anything about all that new stuff. Everything has changed so much. And anyway, we used a lot of that for the, and part of the stuff was an editor, some of you may know, Carolyn Bouquet at Channel 2, who put something together for my going away party. So we had that in there. But the camera crews were really, all that going down the hill there and the skating, it was at the skiing, Villa Olivia. We had a guy sitting in the back of a snowmobile with an antenna facing up the hill at the truck with the dish to catch that, and the truck was pointing downtown to the Sears of the Hancock building where they picked up the signal and then relayed it out. And I was telling them, stop, and I meant the crew in the the snowmobile, and I said stop, and all the skiers at the ski club stopped, and it would take us too long to show it, but it was like one of those old silent movies with the fire drills and stuff going on in there. But anyway, I would love to thank everybody here, Jim and Rebecca and Cheryl and all the folks. This is a wonderful award, and somebody stole it already. And I will cherish it. Thank you very much.
What a perfect finale. You couldn't top that. That's what the Silver Circle is all about. Thank you all for being here tonight. Drive safely, and God willing, we'll all be back here next year for more honorees. Congratulations, everyone.